is my review of Joaquin, Folie à Deux. They say don't judge a book by its cover, but I believe the opposite. Judge a book by its cover. For example, if you give your movie a title like Folie à Deux, referencing some foreign deep expression that one has to look up in order to understand, then you better damn well have it be appropriate. And I'm just going to start off by saying there is no shared madness in this movie, in Joker 2. He's the only one with the madness, and I'm not even sure he's mad anymore, at least not in this movie. Lady Gaga and his fans, they're all just kind of like, well, they're anarchists who are along for the ride with him. But they're not by any means mad. And I'm not even sure that the Joker, Arthur Fleck, is mad because he doesn't do anything crazy. I mean, we all have fantasies. If he's having fantasies of singing songs, that's pretty normal. But anyways, I thought it was important to give my review of Joker 1 and my experience when that came out. Because there's no way of approaching Joker 2 without having watched Joker 1. Okay, so when I first saw Joker 1, I thought it was pretty boring. Very little happens. It's kind of like a teenager's like punk rebellion kind of movie. I also felt like it was in a way telling my story because I'm very anti-capitalist. I hate rich people. And I felt it was kind of like a cheap telling of my story. And the inclusion of madness, like his insanity, as an excuse for what he does. I think the movie probably would have been a lot better if they didn't rely so much on his insanity and just had him be an unfortunate person. But instead they involved like his mother being crazy, and they just focused a lot on his lack of It's okay to include his lack of medication. That he can't afford the right medication and all of that. But you could also focus a lot on how, he can't get a job, he's broke, even when he tries to get a job, he won't get... It didn't all have to be on his insanity, his being down and out. Like, you don't have to be insane in order to be rejected by society, is what I'm saying. So I suppose I've always been confused by what I didn't like about that movie, and I think part of it might be not so much that it makes mentally ill people look bad, but it makes the downtrodden, it's saying that they're all mentally ill. And it really amazed me how many people of all stripes loved this movie, Joker 1. One of the people, one of my best friends, whose opinion I highly respect, she loved it. She thought it was amazing. Another good friend of mine who has schizophrenia, he loved it. He thought it was amazing. He has severe, he died. He had severe mental illness, and he loved it. He thought it was like the best movie he ever saw. My neighbor, who's illiterate practically, and he's in his 70s, I showed it to him like a couple months ago, and he loved it. So like, it was one of those strange lightning in a bottle movies where everybody seemed to love it, except for me. I guess I would add that I thought the movie was it was too negative for me to enjoy. Kind of like Requiem for a Dream, where I would only watch that movie once because it was just so negative, so nasty. Also, it was too realistic. Whereas, like, I kind of want to watch, this went like even more realistic than Christopher Nolan, right? And it's got its place, right? It was a good movie, but I'd prefer, Batman, and I'd prefer the Joker. And I should note that since these two movies rely so much on the idea of mental illness, I know people who are mentally ill. They have schizophrenia, which is the most severe type of mental illness as far as I can tell, but who have good families who support them, and they've managed to live very successful, happy lives. They've even gotten married and had kids. Yeah, so I'm just repeating myself, but I think the movies lean too much on him being mentally ill as a cause or reason for him being a criminal or being poor and downtrodden. I would say the first Joker would have been better if they had not included that story about his mother being crazy, and if they had only All they needed to do was mention that he didn't have his pills, and they didn't have to have him fabricate realities. That wasn't essential for that story. And maybe focused a tiny bit more. I know they did focus on it, but focused a little bit more on his, unfortunate circumstances. The fact that nobody loved him. Yeah, he didn't have anybody. He's eccentric. He's an odd person. And his loneliness and all that, right? Just a little bit... Turn the volume a little bit up on that, and turn the volume a little bit or a lot down on the mental illness. So my question to the fans is, what were you expecting with the sequel? It always amazes me when the fans are pissed off at a sequel when the first one basically laid out that this is where this was going. And I mean, I'll tell you what the fans wanted. They wanted what I wanted. They wanted the Joker to take over the city, right? We wanted to see his madness go even more out of control, and how he ends up taking over the city and driving everybody crazy and starting a revolution, right? But the problem is that the essence of the first one wasn't really in that vein, and it was hyper realistic, and it's not realistic that this would happen, that he would end up taking over the city. So, sorry guys. I'll always remember when I was a kid. I'm 47 years old, but when I was a kid and I saw Ghostbusters 2, I was like so disappointed by seeing the Ghostbusters doing birthday parties and being like a laughing stock, when I was thinking that they'd be like heroes by now and they'd be expanding their operation. They would have now there'd be 100 Ghostbusters or something. But that's the problem with sequels like Spider-Man 2. They nerf the character after the character succeeded so hugely. But I had the same experience observing the fans in Joker 2 as I did with Guardians and Thor. Okay, Thor Ragnarok was terrible, I thought. But for some reason the fans loved it. And then when Thor Love and Thunder came out, I'm like, everybody's all disappointed at like how cheesy and stupid it was, and how Korg is like the star of the movie. And I'm like, but didn't you see the Ragnarok? Like, didn't you see that this was where it was going to go? And same with Guardians, although Guardians, for some reason, everybody likes all those movies. But, I mean, people were slightly, I guess, disappointed with the second Guardians movie. And I'm like, well, I was actually pleasantly surprised because I hated the first one so much. It's just going to be more of the same. This is just, this is James Gunn in all his glory. And then same with Wonder Woman. Like, Wonder Woman was a terrible movie. And then the fans were upset by the second one. And I don't get it. I mean, I thought Wonder Woman 2 was Wonder Woman 1 was just as bad as Wonder Woman 2. And same with Aquaman. I never saw Aquaman 2 and I never will. But what were you expecting? I mean, some notes on the director. What's his name? Todd Phillips or something? Some are saying that he was basically just copying Taxi Driver or King of Comedy when he made the first Joker. And that's all well and good. But there's a reason there wasn't a sequel to Taxi Driver or King of Comedy. So, and some are saying that, with this sequel, he had to now show his chops because he couldn't lean on Taxi Driver or whatever he was basing the first one on. Fine, whatever. I wasn't even going to watch this movie because of the bad reviews. And I'd already decided to make a review without even watching it. And here's some notes I made. Okay, so the director, he's not a tested director. He's very hit or miss, right? He made the Hangover movies. And the first Joker may have been an accident, like Donnie Darko. Because if you ever see the director's cut of Donnie Darko, you realize that movie was an accident, that it was so good. Because the original music he wanted, the songs that he wanted, he couldn't afford. And those songs suck. If you watch the director's cut, it has the actual songs that he wanted. And they don't fit at all. Maybe this director of Joker 2 got overly ambitious and sloppy and lazy, thought he was being subversive. He revealed his lack of understanding of his own subject matter.
Look, I told you, I don't want you all coming up here.
I don't care what you tell me, okay?
I'm trying to get through this and you're just making it harder.
You think you're the only one doing...
Why am I showing a trailer for American History X? Well, that's coming up. A couple words on the musical thing, the songs. It didn't bother me whatsoever. It was fine, It was fine. It was touching. It was nice. Not a big deal. I mean, there's a lot of people who hate real music, right? They only listen to like hip hop or rock, hard rock. So this was fine, and it did set a tone. It was a little bit jarring at times. It was a bit off. It stilted, it stunted, it stopped. The interrupted the story, but whatever. Yeah, this movie kind of reminds me of American History X, as well as a couple of others, which I'll note. Because where did you think it was going to go in the third act, right? He was a terrible person. So what did you think was going to happen? It had to end in tragedy, right? And yeah, it's a nasty movie, right? But that's the way it had to go. And if you liked it, you probably liked it for the wrong reasons. And, hey, it's a good movie, but it went where it had to go. And that's where the Joker had to go. Although, I would say, after some thought, that the Joker duology, they should have had a second act. And that was the problem. It went from like first act, Joker gets successful, and final act, Joker fails. But there should have been something in the middle. And if people wanted a sequel to American History X, I guess they were hoping he would get revenge on all the bad guys. But that wouldn't be where the movie would go if there was a sequel. It would have turned into him being a priest or something. That's why there isn't a sequel to American History X. And continuing with the this whole, bad guy as the protagonist.
Bill Foster is an ordinary man.
Where you going?
Going home.
Not this way, you're not.
Why not?
Metro rail construction, that's why not.
Living in the everyday world.
I don't suppose you have a couple of bucks you can give me. It would really help me out. If you give me your address, I'll mail it back honest.
A patient man.
Can I help you?
Yes, I'd like a ham and cheese omelet.
That whammy burger girl is Michelle Pfeiffer's sister, by the way. So, Falling Down is the same. It's a protagonist who's kind of a violent person. And where did you expect this movie to go? Did you think he was going to take over the whole city by the end? No, he has to fail by the end. And that's very much in the arc of how the Joker had to go. However, the difference between the Joker duology and Falling Down and American History X and Breaking Bad is that the Joker didn't get a second act where he was supposed to have a lot more gains and successes, just like Michael Douglas is having right here, right? He didn't kick some butt. I was even thinking that the Joker Part 2 could have also worked. It either could have worked as the third movie of a trilogy or the second movie of a trilogy. If it was the second movie, then we would have him. This would be his Empire Strikes Back, where he loses everything in the second episode, and then in the third episode he becomes victorious. Or it would be the third episode, and there would be a second episode where he gets even more powerful and takes over the whole city. Yeah, so the folly of Folie Deux is that there isn't... It's like Breaking Bad without any of Walter White's successes. It's like if you took the first episode and the last episode of Breaking Bad and cut out everything in the middle, right? And you just lose, or you just have him losing all the time and he never succeeds. And then he just, dies miserable. You need to have some kind of victory for this guy, for this Joker, Arthur Fleck. And again, the movie shouldn't have been called Folie Deux. It should have been called Arthur Fleck. Or at least that should have been, if it was the third movie or the second movie. It should have been called Arthur Fleck. And then the audiences couldn't complain about how it was false advertising. How about have the second movie be called Arthur Fleck, and then have the third one be called The Joker Rises. Or have the second one be called, The Joker Folie Deux, and then the third one be called Arthur Fleck, and have that be his final demise. And there's this scene in Folie Deux where Lady Gaga's like, hey, wait, you're not going to be evil Joker? Well, then I'm jumping ship. Like, you suck, buddy. I thought you were cool. You're not cool anymore. You're just Arthur Fleck. I'm not interested in Arthur Fleck. I'm interested in the Joker. Reminds me very much of that scene in American History X where he tells his girlfriend, I'm not into this stuff anymore. I'm not into this gang, I can't say the words, stuff anymore. And she's like, ugh, yuck, you're disgusting. And she just falls out of love with him in a second. Very, very similar. So my final thoughts on Folie à Deux is that I was expecting nothing out of this movie because I didn't really like the first one. So I didn't think it was half bad. I think everybody else is an idiot because they expected something more. I don't really get it, but whatever. I mean, I guess the joke's on you because you thought this was going to be... You thought he was going to fight Batman or something? I didn't mind Wonder Woman Part 2 because I hated Wonder Woman Part 1. I hated Love and Thunder, but not as much as most people because I hated Ragnarok. I didn't really mind Guardians 2 because I hated Guardians 1. And I'll just end this by saying that the Joker Part 2 should have been called Arthur Dent, Arthur Fleck, or The Redemption of Arthur Fleck, because that's really what the story is. If you support gays, click like. If you respect blacks, comment. If you think women are people too, click the notification bell. And if you care about sick children, subscribe.